Crazy Tank Dell update. And did the Texans get better in this draft? Or are we going to have to sit and wait? Let's go back and revisit what Nick Caserio said after the second day of the draft, first day the Texans picked. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, top two.
Really wild update on the Tank Dell shooting and how bad it could have been. Plus, did the Texans really get better in this draft? It was a wild reaction Monday, a lot of discussion. Seems like there's been a lot of trust gained by the Texans. Is it blind faith or is it based on substance? It is the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. Let's just hop right in on this this crazy Tank Dell story. So we know that he was struck in Florida. He's going to be okay. There was an update today, a press conference on the incident, and we got a just a visual of just how bad this could have been for Tank Dell. Let's sit back and watch this. This is pretty wild.
To Tank Dell, who's also at this event. In total, again, there was 10 people who were injured. 10 people were hospitalized. None suffered life-threatening injuries. 9 have been released from the hospital. 1 is still in the hospital and is likely to be released soon. Shell casings. So the report of Bowie, Bowie has a 9mm. There are 4 muzzle flashes during this firearm encounter back and forth. There are 3 expelled casings of a 9mm that are found on the ground. 1 live round, which is likely when the security officer ejects the live round. But again, 4 muzzle flashes, 3 casings, 1 live round. And with scenarios like this, sometimes you just don't initially find the extra casing. There's a pool there. It's easily could have dropped and somebody could have been kicked with people fleeing out of the area. On the other side of the room, and the person who has yet to be identified, there are 5 muzzle flashes on that side, and there are 5 .45 caliber shell casings that were located on the scene. And I think that this is a little bit of a different narrative than what we initially thought, that one person presented a firearm, fired multiple times, injuring 10 people. This is a shootout that's going back and forth. Let me show where Tank Dell, Nathaniel Dell, is obviously a third round 2023 draft pick, 69th overall from the Houston Texans. Somebody who was a star athlete in the Daytona.
Okay, so he is right here in the middle. You can see right there. That's the blue right there, says Tank Dell.
The beach area, known to a lot of people there. He is standing literally between the firearm altercation. The video,
I guess that stands for unknown. That's the unknown guy.
Shows that he's walking. His report.
And there's the kid that's already been arrested.
Because he is a victim in this case. He has been injured as a result of this. His report was
Good
that
Lord.
He saw this, or actually he saw what was going on. He took his cell phone out, had his cell phone in his hand, but you can see the position that he's in. He's right in the middle of this firearm altercation. And again, we will continue to work with him as a victim in this particular case. So where we're at with this, as investigations like this continue to evolve, the county will meet later today. I've had.
I mean, that's absolutely insane. Just how lucky Tank Dell is to I guess to be alive and to be in good condition. That's absolutely insane. I saw Ocho Cinco and Shannon Sharp were talking about it. I don't know. It seems like they kind of made assumptions, but you do got to think that this was at least pretty alarming for Tank Dell. right there in the middle. That's insane. I don't know how you're ever the same about that. And I don't know. I'm seeing Edwin say he saw Ocho. I think Ocho talks out of his ass a lot, trying to talk some sense into him. I don't know that he knows either one of these people that were involved. So I don't know that that's fair. Like, I don't think he was rolling with the wrong. Maybe he was. It just kind of seems like Ocho Cinco is just kind of a guy who gets on a podcast late night with Shannon Sharp and just says whatever. I don't know that was fair advice. I mean, it's good advice. You do definitely got to watch the way you handle stuff, but I don't really know that. I don't know that Ocho Cinco was speaking with like 100% knowledge of what went on. I could be wrong. Although he did say he texted him briefly. And I guess Tank had said he's all right. Who knows? Getting back to the draft, Reaction Monday was interesting today because there's always, the draft is always interesting. You get in the moment, you sleep on it, and then the full draft concludes and you kind of assess what went down on the draft and what happened. And my question is, what picks in this draft? And if the answer is none, it's not like you just completely missed the draft. But what picks in this draft can contribute immediately? What picks in this draft do you think could contribute immediately? That would be my question. Yeah, I mean, move differently. I think that's. I mean, you're naturally going to move differently. Going back to the Ocho Cinco thing, but talk sense into him. I don't know. He needs. I don't know. He needs sense talk to him. I don't know if Ocho Cinco is the one to talk sense into you. But which one of these guys can contribute immediately? That would be my question. We go through these picks, and I'll just flash them at the bottom of the screen. Can Lassiter contribute immediately? Is Blake Fisher going to contribute immediately? Kalen Bullock, how much growing pains is there going to be? Cade Stover, I think the answer might be yes there. Jamal Hill, maybe on special teams, and maybe in coverage, we'll see. Jawar Jordan, maybe on kick return, and then Bird, Harris, Henderson. Those are kind of TBD as well. So I don't know that this is a short-term draft of guys that are going to contribute immediately. Maybe eventually we get there. I don't know where Tank Dell got shot. No idea. But which one of these picks can contribute immediately? Olo, you got to go in timeout for that. All the picks. All right, brother. I'm going to put you in timeout. You're just talking now. I would say Stover for sure. And I would say probably Lassiter in some way. Although, is he going to be your immediate nickel guy and replace Des King? And the other thing about this Texans team when it comes to developing guys, and I think this is important to think about, is you have a pretty decent football team. You have a decent football team. So how patient are you going to be developing guys? Which I think matters. You can still develop guys if they're not on the field all the time. But if this is the 2021, 2022 Texans, you're probably seeing guys with a little bit more patience. But can you afford to put a cornerback that's going through the growing pains or a safety that's going through the growing pains on the field if you're expected to compete immediately? What does that look like? That's the interesting thing. And I'm actually kind of intrigued about these guys developing. I do think that there's kind of a trust in the organization to where there's a lot of people that will defend them. But I don't think that I think the development is good because of the culture, but I also don't know how much patience there's going to be. So that will be really, really interesting. I actually also heard that there are people that follow this thing pretty closely that actually believe that Blake Fisher could beat out Titus Howard sooner rather than later. What would that mean? On one hand, it would mean that you proactively look to improve. On the other hand, it would be a huge indictment on the contract. Some people think they wouldn't allow that to happen. I don't know. If Fisher is clearly better than Titus Howard, then I could see it happening. I don't know. I don't even know that Lonnie Johnson makes the team. I think he's a camp body. I doubt he has much guarantee money. I don't even know that Lonnie Johnson makes the squad. I don't know that Titus Howard is tradable. I hope Titus Howard's really, really good and Fisher develops. And 2 years from now, whether it's Howard or Tunsil, he ends up starting. And yes, I think Lance and John Harris like him a lot. I'd be surprised for sure, as Scott says, but I know that Lance Zierlein and John Harris like him a lot. And they like him to play quality right tackle immediately. So who knows? If Petrie can take a step up in his second year in the new system, then Petrie, Bullock, Sting, and Locksmith, you're already going by the nickname for Lassiter. I don't know if people can catch on to that yet. Will be a nasty secondary for years to come. We probably need to see Lassiter play some NFL football first, I would say. I do think Petrie's going to be a contributor. How good? Who knows? Would it mean that you threw a bunch of money at Titus for no reason? Perhaps. But who knows? We should see. But let's fervent Texan was taken back by the tape. Okay. I'm glad you crunching that, sir. How much are you crunching tape though? Let's be real. Fervent TX text. No disrespect. How much you crunching the tape? You just sitting there watching all the angles and stuff like that, like Harris and Zierlein. Maybe you are. That's wild to me though. Let's go back and listen to Caserio on the guys and the guys that he drafted, the three top picks in this draft, and just try to get a sense of what he thinks about this whole thing. Yeah, he was in that tape crunching, man. He was blown back by the tape. Here's Caserio. Who does watch tape?
Do I need a microphone? You guys can all hear me. So appreciate you guys sticking around. So hopefully a productive couple days here. Selected 3 guys that we liked at various points in the process. Spent significant time with them. So excited to add them to the team. So I think the big thing for us is just try to continue to create as much competition as possible. We can probably, you guys can ask me just some questions here, individual. I'm not going to kind of go through a 1,000-word intro like I did the other day. I think you guys heard enough of that. So, but we're certainly making progress. And like I said, a productive couple days. I'd say even though we didn't pick yesterday, we were, pretty active. We were on the phones and just kind of looking at some opportunities that may have presented themselves, and nothing came to fruition. So we're in a really good position here today. And I think going into it, we had kind of looked at sort of a block of players and a group of players in a range. And kind of if you were to draw kind of a square in a box kind of within that band, we felt if we could get 3 or 4 players kind of in that area, then we'd feel pretty good. And I think the players that we picked were players that we identified and then in those areas. So done picking here for today. Tomorrow we're set to pick at 127. Don't have a 5th, the 2 6s and the 2 7s. So there'll still be some opportunities here for us to add to the roster. Can't say enough about the work the staff has done. And I mentioned it the other day, but it's a credit to, honestly, there's so many people that deserve a lot more credit for where we are just as a team in terms of the players we identified. A lot of communication, a lot of good constructive dialogue, certainly receptive and open to everybody's input and ideas. And, D'Amico's happy and excited. So anytime the head coach is happy and excited, that's a good day. It's a good night. So certainly go ahead. You can ask some questions and kind of go from there.
Made some phone calls yesterday. Did you all consider, or did you all make phone calls today? And how did the influx of offensive players early
And that's a hell of a question right there. Is Nick pinching his nipples? 713-572-4610. Is Nick Caserio pinching his nipples? That's a good C by you, Terrence.
In the first round, maybe.
That's my type of
Also, you're
team.
thinking if it did, or you're opposed to that?
Yeah, honestly, the activity yesterday really didn't change our thinking at all. I think you saw, what was it, 14 offensive players in a row, which is a record. So you just adjust to the circumstances, and as a result of certain players getting picked, other players maybe available, maybe that you hadn't anticipated. But it's funny, we were probably as active yesterday, even though we didn't pick. So in our responsibility and our jobs is to try to look for some opportunities. So in trades, and we've talked about this, I've talked to you all about this, trades are a function of just opportunity and a willingness on the other side as well. So we talked to quite a few teams at various points, including today as well. So, and nothing came to fruition. So we picked, and we were comfortable. You always have to be prepared to pick where you're scheduled to pick. And if you feel you can move.
That's kind of wild. He's openly admitting they were talking about moving. Now, are they trying to move up for Kool-Aid? There's two conversations that I do wish that I could hear involving these picks. We'll get into that in a sec, but here's more from Nick Caserio. This is him explaining his top 3 picks.
Then you'll explore it, which we certainly did. It didn't work out, but honestly, it didn't affect, I think, our thought process and our philosophy because of what happened in the first round. I think you saw some trends. So it was kind of 14 offensive players. Then there was a little bit of a spread there from kind of 15 to 32 there at the end. And then today, what you saw, there's a few receivers, I think, that went really at the top, and then you saw a run on defensive players, specifically in the secondary. And then kind of the next run was offensive line. So you started to see those players come off the board. So you're looking at it as you go and saying, okay, if you bypass X, then what is the opportunity cost associated with that? So our approach is just very pragmatic, very thoughtful, very rational, and just pick players that we feel are a good fit for our program. And that's what we tried to do.
With this roster being significantly more built up over now than it was probably when you got here, is it fair to say you were more honed in on maybe needs or wants, and those boxes you talk about being a little tighter?
Yeah, we don't really take a needs-based approach. It's more football player-based approach, and you just can't have enough quality football players. And there might be a situation where a player maybe doesn't play this year, but maybe his opportunity potentially could be more next year because of maybe how the roster is constructed. But we don't have a crystal ball, so we're not going to sort of make any predetermined decisions about a player's role, who fits where. Honestly, the competition will sort itself out. I think what we've done, what we've hopefully have done, is just create a sense of urgency. And you have to play well and perform well in order to stay in this building. And if you don't, then we have to keep the 53 best, and then however we put the practice squad together. So I think overall you're just elevating the entire team to the best of your ability. And that's, I think, what good teams try to do. Like, we feel we have a good team. You know, we feel like we'll be competitive. What does that look like? We're all going to find out here shortly. And we'll have a better idea once we get into training camp. So you never force anything. We look at needs or what we think can help our team, or if we were to come out, going into the day, I mean, D'Amico and I sat and we said, all right, if we were able to come out with X, Y, Z, how would we feel? And I think it's funny, we were just talking in the draft room and we looked and had a good conversation. I was like, how do you feel? He said, I feel pretty good, So I think in his mind, I think kind of things came out the way that maybe we had hoped or had anticipated. Frankly, we're not really that surprised how the draft kind of fell. I mean, it went about how we thought it was going to go, including, when we look back at where we scheduled to pick at 23, what the options would have been, who we would have picked. I'm sure that's, you all were doing that. So, I mean, we're doing the same thing because you're kind of looking up there going, all right, well, if we had a pick, what would we have done? So, but you just keep moving forward and you keep planning for the next day. And at 42, we knew we were going to get a good football player. At least that was the hope. So hopefully we did that.
Go ahead. Kamari Lassiter, follow up on Kalen. What did you see from him in the SEC, the kind of competition he was able to play against?
Yeah. I mean, it starts with Coach Smart and, the program that he's put together, he's assembled. I think when you look at the number of players, I mean, I don't know how many Georgia players were drafted today, but it was a pretty significant amount. They had a number of players that played dual roles. I mean, Tyke Smith, who was picked, Bullard, Kamari got picked. Lassiter is position flex. He's played in the perimeter of the formation. He's played inside the formation. I'd say he plays with a linebacker type mentality. I mean, he's a corner, but he tackles. He's tough. He's physical. I'm sure there'll be a question about his speed and how fast he ran, but he's not slow. So, the speed really wasn't a concern of ours. So, the time's the time. But, we're drafting football players. We're not drafting track teams. So,
we're drafting track teams. We'll get back to Caserio in a sec. Nick Caserio speaking there. We'll get back to him. We'll get this going. Little technical difficulties from Caserio here
where he fits.
There you go. Go ahead.
About the way he finds the ball, the instinctiveness. What did you guys see jumping on the tape?
Yeah. I mean, it shows up, Aaron. I mean, whatever his production is.
Come on, Nick.
Special teamers all the way throughout their entire college career. Because that's the thing that stood out to you to where you want to be able to maybe allow them to have some role in the team, even if they're not starters.
Yeah, I mean, just philosophically, you're either a starter on defense or a starter on offense or a starter in a kicking game. And if you're a backup, either going to transpire, but there's a good chance we're going to probably have 5 or 6 corners. May be. I mean, we had, Matt Light was called an undersized tackle in New England, but that's one that played tackle for 10 years. So sometimes you get a little bit too cute. You try to say, well, we're just going to bump this guy inside just because. So, I mean, Blake's a tackle. So can a player do something beyond what his original position is? That comes through time. That comes through practice. There's a lot of different dynamics that go into play. I think Titus is definitely unique. I mean, I'd say, Titus is a better tackle than he is an inside player. I mean, I think, that's how we feel. I mean, Titus is honestly one of the better tackles, in the league. So, but you look at your group, you're going to have, you have 8 at the game. So, all right, you got to have a backup tackle. You have to have backup for the inside spots. So are they a backup guard only? Are they a 3-position inside player where they can put their hand on the ball? Can your next tackle also play left tackle? So there's a lot of mechanizations that could take place. So you always want to put a player in a position to accentuate the things that he does well and not just force feeding a guy. There's too many examples, too many times where you just do that, and it's not fair to the player. So we'll see how it goes. But Blake's experience specific to him has been a tackle, so treat him as a tackle. And we always say they're a tackle until they're not.
These last 3, Sarge, Cole, and
I'll go last. Cole.
Nick, when you look at day 3 compared to day 2, when you saw the run on tackles, you started to see a lot of teams start trading up. Do you view the same way when you see a run on a certain position that maybe you want to covet to move up on day 3 compared to what you would on day 2?
Yeah, it's really just about supply and demand. And it's honestly, at this point, it's where you have the players graded. So you have a certain player graded at a certain level. Then once you lose that category, where's the next break point? How many players are you actually going to have available? I mean, one of the things we'll do in the morning is, okay, at 120, whatever we are, 127, I think. Realistically, what are our options going to be? All right, and it's not, well, we're trading up, because, we want to trade up. It's to trade up just for positioning, for supply and demand. So it's not necessarily about one player. It's more, what are your options? What are you looking at? So that's how we've always tried to approach it. So, we'll see see what happens tomorrow. Sarge, go ahead.
Nick, you said in the past that, going into the drafting players, it's kind of like a crapshoot. You can get lucky, you can be unlucky. So when you're drafting these guys, especially the ones that you drafted tonight, when you looked at them, did you see that they had that mindset that you all were looking for? You seen the tape, but sitting down talking to them, that they have that, what you all consider that swarm mentality?
Yes, Sarge. Honestly, that's a huge part of it. I would say Lassiter, this is like no question about it. This is like hands down. So it's actually a huge part of the calculus. And I think our players understand that as well. So when a player comes in the building, they know, they're aware. So are we consistent with our messaging? Are we doing what we say? Are we doing what we believe in? Are we espousing our philosophy at all levels? They know. So our responsibility is to, D'Amico and I's responsibility is to one another, to the coaches, and then in turn to the players. Because if you bring in a player that maybe has some question marks that ahead of time, the players are going to look at you and say, all right, wait a minute, what's going on here, right? So do you practice what you preach? I know not to oversimplify, but it's a huge part of the decision-making. And I would say specific to these three players, Lassiter without question. Bullock, great kid. He's young, but he's a great kid, cares a lot about football. I'm sure you guys will hear about his story. The fact that he's actually in the position that he is honestly, mind-blowing. What he's had to endure, what he's been through. And Fisher is a really solid kid. Going back to what we talked about the other day, using information and talking to people. So, JP was a teammate of Blake's, so that's a good resource. So you can get all the information you want, talk to the school, talk to whomever. Okay, when you talk to somebody who was actually in the meeting room with him, what are your thoughts? That carries weight. So again, and then it reinforces, all right, you know what, this guy fits what we're about. He fits our culture. He fits the swarm mindset. And if you start there, then you can put your head on a pillow at night and say, all right, make the right. It doesn't mean you're not going to take chances or maybe take risks, but you have to take calculated risk and then ultimately decide, all right, does this make sense for the entire building, the organization, and for our team? So to answer your question, it's absolutely important, and we certainly prioritize it because we should. And honestly, if you look around the league, look at how these teams are being put together. More and more teams are prioritized because in the end, you're going to win with people. And when a game is on the line, are they dependable? Are they reliable? Are they going to do the right thing? Are they being consistent? Are they going to be able to handle the pressure? Are they going to be able to handle adversity? That's real. So we can say all we want about how much talent they have and all that, but in the end, it's about mental and physical toughness and your ability to perform under pressure when the stakes are the highest.
Hey, can you just talk about, you guys have your philosophy of how you approach the draft, and we're always asking, well, this happened, that happened, does it change? How is it, how important is it that you stay true to whatever your philosophy is, which I'm sure builds in for flexibility? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's important. It just kind of, you want to be consistent, year after year. So are you practicing what you preach? And you're trying to put, and we've been fortunate, we feel we have a pretty good infrastructure in place. We have a really good coaching staff. We have a great head coach. We have a supportive ownership group, and we have a lot of other people in support areas that are a big part of what we're doing. So, all that factors in. So, and I've said this from the beginning, that's all we're really trying to do is just put together as consistent a team, as consistent a product year after year, put ourselves an opportunity, give ourselves an opportunity where we have a chance for success. We're not guaranteed anything. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go out there and be 13-4 or 17-0. That's not going to happen. But do you put your team and organization in a position where you have an opportunity, and are you doing it with the right people, and are you doing things that you actually say that you're doing, that you believe in? And I think everybody that's affiliated with our program, whether it's in the scouting department, whether it's in football ops, they see that. And when you stay true to your discipline, people, let's say the belief continues to build. So belief starts with, I would say in our situation with D'Amico, I'd say everybody believes in D'Amico and what he's doing. And again, it goes back to the consistency. There's nobody more consistent than D'Amico Ryans in everything that he does, that he believes in. The players see that. We all feel that. So it starts there. Then ultimately it's responsibility of the players, because in the end, we could say all we want to say, but they're relying on each other on the field. Like when there's 80,000 people, like nobody can hear anything, but you can hear the guy next to you. So you're just trying to stack as many blocks in place over the course of time. And when you look at some of the better programs in the league, and we're not there yet, I'm not, believe me, saying that we're in that position. Hopefully we're heading that way. But when you look at some of the better programs, that's what they've done. I mean, there's no better example than Kansas City. I mean, you put them at the top of the list. You put Baltimore at the top of the list. I mean, what, Sean and Brandon are doing in Buffalo, there's the competition. So are we putting ourselves in a position where we have an opportunity to compete with those teams? Like, we'll find out. So, I mean, AFC is as competitive as, any league in sport. So, we know what the challenges are in front of us, and we're not going to run from them, and we're going to try to do our part. And, we're excited about the opportunity in front of us. And, hopefully we just keep doing the right things and just making good, sound decisions along the way. All right. Thank you all.
All right, there you go. That was Nick. That was after day one. The craziest thing for me with Caserio over the course of this draft is you can see him kind of still there in hardo mode. He's talking about, right kind of guys, all that. Night one, you have all 21-year-olds, all pretty much 3-year players. Then by night one, I mean night two of the draft, night one for the Texans. I'll just say day two to eliminate any confusion. So you have 3-year guys, you have younger guys on day two. Day three, it's a bunch of guys who were in college for a while. A lot of 5-year guys, a lot of guys that spent a lot of time in college, some guys who spent time at other colleges. So it's just kind of interesting how that balance. It's also really interesting how Nick Caserio seemed kind of giddy at the conclusion of the draft. This was the most giddy that I'd seen Nick Caserio, to the point he came out and said, "We grinded out a win." He didn't say it's to be determined. Mr. It's dumb to grade draft said we grinded out a win. That's what he felt like with DeMeco Ryans, which you can accuse me of perhaps that Nick Caserio and I overanalyze words and all that. That's fair. But I have watched everything that Nick Caserio said, and I haven't seen him that giddy in a long time. There are 2 questions, and there's a couple of comments in here. Mr. Heisberg says it wasn't a splashy draft, but it was definitely a solid one. My question would be, why definitely? Is that just trust? Like, do you definitely think it was a solid one? I definitely think there's potential for it to be a solid one, but definitely, it could go bad. But again, my thing with the Texans, and I've said this, is when you have a good culture, when you have a good quarterback, you can overcome bad drafts. Again, not saying this is a bad draft. I gave it a C. And we'll see how that whole thing goes. But I don't think this is I don't think this was a really, really definitely a solid draft. I think you can look at it a number of ways, but I don't think that. Wasn't Christian Harris also a DB at one point? I thought I heard somewhere, but I might be wrong. Christian Harris was actually a corner, receiver, running back, all that type of stuff at one point. So he's actually played pretty much everything. I have 2 questions, and I want to get y'all's thoughts on this, and 2 private convos that I would love to hear from Nick Caserio. Number 1 is, what do you think in the war room they were talking about when it came to Lassiter versus DeJean versus Kool-Aid McKinstry? You heard Caserio admit that he was perhaps trying to move up. Do you think that they would have taken Lassiter had the other 2 guys been available? I find that very hard to believe. Very hard to believe. The other thing is, what was the conversation like when they talk about Fisher and they talk about the short and long-term plan when it comes to Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil? Because there's no way that you don't draft that guy, whether it's early this year, whether it's 2 years from now. There's no way you don't draft him with a vision of him eventually being a starting tackle. Was it as simple as, eventually we're not going to be able to afford both of our tackles because we're going to be paying CJ, so we want to develop him? Was it, man, this guy might actually be able to beat Titus now? We might have something there. obviously the depth comes into play, but if you're not drafting a guy for the ideal scenario and you're basically getting insurance for your tackles, which is what they say, whether you believe it or not, how do you think that they looked at the two tackles? That would be my question. So which corner do they really like? Like, had Lassiter and Kool-Aid been there, do they pass on Kool-Aid for Lassiter? And would that have made you feel more confident in the pick, or would it made you feel less confident? I think it's a fair question to ask. And what was the conversation with Fisher? I like Bullock a lot. They seem real giddy about that. How does he fit in? What do those growing pains look like? That'll be interesting. I know he had some bad tape at USC, but I don't know too many people that didn't. But those are the two conversations I would love to get into. Did the Texans make themselves better, perhaps in the future? I can't say unequivocally that they're better now heading into week one. Who are the for sure these guys are going to contribute players? I mean, this is cornerbacks go through growing pains. You're not always going to find a Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, a safety like Bullock. He's going to have to develop. You don't know if Fisher's even going to play. And then the rest of the guys, these are all developmental guys. There's some long-term possibilities, but I can't unequivocally say that. I will say this. I do trust the Texans, and I do trust their evaluation. Why is there so much hate for Lassiter? I don't know if there's hate for Lassiter. I think there's questions about his speed. I think a lot of Texans fans perhaps wanted Kool-Aid. And I think they got DeJean. I don't know that he's getting a lot of hate. I think he's getting a lot of love. Kool-Aid didn't look happy when the Saints picked him. I mean, think about it. I mean, he's got all his Alabama guys here. I would imagine that he was like Texans fans, kind of looking forward to the possibility of coming here, whether it was going to be a thing or not. So and now he is in Alabama country. There's no doubt about that. That's a really, really good point. Appreciate everyone for coming through. I'm going to go try to sleep off this cold. Subscribe, like, right along. It is the Locker Room. Fortunate stuff for Tank Dell, and a lot of questions about the draft. We'll continue to address those. We'll continue to get to know the prospects. Really intrigued by Hill. Just put that video up. Check that out. And I appreciate y'all for coming to the Locker Room. I'll see y'all tomorrow here and talk to y'all tomorrow, 10 a.m. Sports Radio 610. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Yeah, it's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the Locker Room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top two and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker Room, yeah, we in the Locker Room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Local